I'm the Ancient Ninja, and this is the Nexus of Truth. So today's subject, I think, is extremely relevant to the things I talk about. It kind of helps wrap them up into a nice little bundle. It's something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and I'm really excited to get into it. So the title of today's episode, The Physical Effect of Morality, where theology meets science and man's law. Now, I've always thought that it's obvious theology and science go hand in hand when the things we do morally have affected us physically. So I'm going to get into kind of the scientific explanation for that and some things which, of course, I'll cite in the description to explain a little bit more about what that means in kind of detail. But first, I kind of want to go over where theology meets man's law. So often I'll hear in conversation people say, oh, well, you can't bring religion into the conversation. Religion shouldn't be brought into the conversation when we're talking about this, and this. And I would reply to that there's no way to not bring religion into the conversation because it's essentially the foundation of the way that we operate as a society, both morally and legally. So one thing I would like to just bring up first would be the fact that the Hebrew Bible and the Hebrew teachings definitely have an effect on Western law. So the way Mosaic law works is it references when Moses came back from God with the Ten Commandments, which we're going to get into a little later, and how I want to explain how the Ten Commandments, how each of them directly affect the things we do. So Moses came back with the Ten Commandments, and basically that's what became Mosaic law, where you abide in a lawful way by the commandments of which God had spoken to Moses. And there is actually a theory, the Mosaic theory, that is a piece of parchment that the government uses, and I'll link below that you guys can kind of read into that. But it's basically explaining how the American legal system is rooted in European law, which is based on Hembury's Code and Mosaic law. So these two legal systems are kind of seen as the oldest laws in humanity, and it's based on religion. So when often we're talking about laws, especially being made, and people are like, oh, you can't bring religion into it, separation of church and state, really everything we do is based upon religion. So religion's already in the conversation. Beliefs that are affected by religion in law. So when it comes to the things that are illegal, like thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, all of those things directly are taken from religion, from Mosaic law, from the way that religion functions, and it's illegal to do a lot of the immoral things based on religion in society. So those are just kind of a couple points of how theology meets man's law. The study of religion, which I'll give you a breakdown on what theology means. I'll actually give you the exact definition of theology. So whoever's watching this, obviously you can Google it, but it's the study of nature and God and religious belief by definition. So you can see how all of these laws that we have and the way that our country functions, and it's even more extreme in other countries, the way that we do function as a nation. I mean, it's one nation under God. We swear on the Bible in court. I mean, law and religion definitely go hand in hand. So when we're talking about these things and people are like, oh, well, you can't use your religious background to back up how you feel, I don't think that makes much sense, seeing as everything in law is really grounded on religion. So now we move on to science. Now, the way that I believe that theology and science go hand in hand is there's many things about our beliefs, our morals, all of that affect society as a whole. So first we'll just talk about fertility being determined by culture. Now there's a study on this, and it basically lays out how human beings, based on the culture that they have over time, determines how fertile they'll be. It'll determine the quality of the society, how, smart, stupid, things like that. And this has been studied many times in many different ways. So I'll link kind of the link below that talks about that. There's actually a gene called the God gene, and I'm sure this is something some people may have heard of. it's not necessarily popular knowledge, but the God gene is an actual gene that the vesicular monoamine transporter 2, the VMA2, that predisposes humans towards spiritual or mystical experiences. Now, I've heard some people talk about this in the sense where they're like, this is clear proof that there was divine intervention and that we've been altered our DNA, which would go into a whole bunch of different theories. I'm not really getting into that today. This just kind of shows you that, okay, not only is religion embedded in our laws, but it's clearly like embedded in us. Human society in general, so you can kind of tell by the way society has started to be, it's because of a clear moral decline. I mean, our morals are selfish, because that's where morals and ethics go hand in hand. We can't just affect our morals on what affects us. It has to be also what's better for society and as a collective. And I think that we're getting more and more into not being about that. We're more based on identity. So another thing that that's very interesting is the fact that vibrations, different emotions, work on different vibrational fields. So everything has a vibration. Everything has a frequency. When it comes to lower emotions, anger, sadness, all those things, they're actually lower on the vibrational ladder. I'm going to put a picture here so you guys can see where, how the emotions rate on a vibration level. It's actually very interesting, and I always reference this when thinking about being sick, because it's actually proven that fear and being in these certain low vibrational states does affect your like body physically, and you can get sicker and sicker, which would explain why our society just wants to incite fear all the time. So the next one with science is actually something I pull from Plato, which is called moral sickness. And it kind of is like, goes like right in with what I was saying about how morality affects our physical body. This actually goes even deeper into discussing like mental disorders and things like that. And often they find that a lack of morality, a lack of God can make you sicker physically. And there's a healing power in having that as a base. And this is some of the greatest minds ever, discussing this and putting these things together. So that also would kind of really cover my next point, which talks about religion, how religious people are actually happier. There's several studies done, and I'm going to link them all below, where it was like an 80% success rate they saw in religious people who were extremely happy compared to non-religious people. And they even have studies that show reading the Bible every day makes you happier. You can take this as you want, you can interpret it how you will. I think that it clearly explains that religion has an effect on us scientifically, on our biology, on our genetics, on the way that we function as a society, and that having happened over and over again as long as we've been here definitely is playing out in front of us. And it also you can see it in certain groups of people and things like that. So that's kind of a couple of the points that I have with science and the way that it goes hand in hand with theology. And I think all of those points are very interesting. I'm going to link everything below. I want to kind of now take a second to go over the 10 Commandments. And each commandment, I think you can tell, okay, these commandments based on the way that we function as a society. And it's just bringing awareness that these 10 commandments being the foundation of really the way that most of us operate. And if you operate outside these, you're a killer, you're a thief, all those things, you're essentially shunned by society. So the first one, no other gods before me. This would explain the clashing of religions, how religion is always, who's true, who's more true, and people are very defensive of their gods. That would explain that in human behavior. No graven images or likenesses. So that would explain dictators actually wanting to get statues. It's like an innate want to defy. And the other religious structures that people actually put up of other gods, again, a natural defiance. Humans, I think, because we're always battling with the spirit and the flesh, and that doesn't even need to be interpreted in a religious way or in a spiritual way, but you're always going against your own self and the things that you want to do. It's sometimes a paradox, and we naturally want to defy things as much as we want to obey them. So we're always kind of clashing at that. That's where you take control of yourself in that sense. The next one, not to take the Lord's name in vain. Now, I don't know about you guys, but anytime someone said Jesus or God or kind of spoken in that way, it's not taken lightly in a room. There's even people that say, saying Jesus' name, it warns off things in the non-physical world, in the spiritual world. That's not something we're going to get into here because, that just goes on a whole other tangent. But so we know that commandment clearly has an effect on modern day. I mean, even in some other countries, other religions, if you dare talk about God in a bad way, you could get killed. So remember the Sabbath day. There's multiple things saying whether Sabbath is on Saturday or Sunday, but both of those are a weekend. Both of those are the 2 days that people technically, rest or have fun, which goes back to the 10 Commandments. Honor thy father and mother, the nuclear family, obviously the love of family and the innate need for people to say, hey, you should obey your parents and things like that. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, and thou shalt not covet. All these things together are essentially shunned in society, and you see it. I mean, no one's appraising these people. They're usually outcast in society. So I think it's pretty clear that theology in itself goes hand in hand with science and man's law. And I think that's why we need to understand when we're discussing things and we're having these conversations, it doesn't make logical sense to leave religion out of the conversation, because this is a huge part of society, and it has been in many societies, and it will always be ingrained in our society the way it is. So it's best that I believe that we need more talk of God, more of that. I believe that we need to have these conversations that it seems people lately don't want to have, which is complete contrast to when you think about the time of our ancestors, where this is probably honestly all they were talking about. So I think in doing so, we can have these discussions and realize that religion does always play a part in it, and to pretend it doesn't and function from an identity-based, non-godless view isn't having the full conversation, and it obviously isn't working. As we see in society, more and more people are wanting to find a faith-based thing to hold on to. So that's going to be it for today. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I kind of went on a tangent there and just started going. I have so many notes, and I want to hit them all in as many points as I can without it being too long. So I'm going to link everything below. If you want to message me and talk about this and discuss more, I always enjoy talking about these things. Well, that's it for today. So as always, keep it pointy.